Dirty Birds, what's up? And welcome to another Atlanta Falcons podcast. I'm your host, Will McFadden. I'm joined by Tori McElhaney. And Tori, this is the episode I think I've been looking forward to. What'd you just do, salute?
I saluted, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. It's not going to
Which branch of the Navy? Or I guess I said Navy. I answered my own question.
Which branch
Would you be good at the Navy?
No.
You hate the water, don't you?
No, I love water.
You are, okay.
I'm a big swimmer. My mom was a big competitive swimmer, so I know how to do all the strokes and everything like that. So
I love off the rails already. We've gone off the defensive end, which is what we're here to talk about today.
I thought you were going to do deep end.
I know, but that's not a segue.
I know.
I did a
Go
transition.
ahead.
I tried to do it.
Okay.
Anyway, so we've got edge rushers on the mind today.
Yeah,
I'm very excited to talk about these guys because, let's be honest, it is kind of the position that I think everybody is once again linking to the Atlanta Falcons in the draft, which is just mere weeks away. So
wow.
Let's go ahead and talk about all of the guys that we've been talking about and just have that conversation. Does that sound like a plan to you, Tori?
Sounds like a plan. As you know, I've been drafting edge rushers to the Falcons for 4 years now, so this should be nothing new for me.
Man, that's just fantasy casting for forever. I feel you need a new hobby. Honestly.
I do. I need to find something to do with my time besides drafting edge rushers to the Falcons.
If you guys have any more time on your hands, though, there's been plenty of coverage written already about edge rushers. We did have a kind of preview of who the Atlanta Falcons could draft in each round at kind of the edge rush position that I wrote that came out on last Monday. So be sure to go check that out. We've got, a lot of rankings, a lot of just kind of scenarios and things like that. So
it's projection season.
Yeah, it's what we do every single day.
Yep.
But let's go ahead and get into the top guys who could be there at pick 15 and conceivably right there on the board for Atlanta to take, because that is kind of the approach.
Right.
Abdul Carter, we're going to just set aside. The dude's a freak. Absolutely love him. But I don't think he's going to be there at 15.
He's not going to fall out of the top 4, just point blank period.
Okay. Well, if we are in agreement about that, let's talk about Mike Green.
Okay.
Who has been, I think, a little bit of, and I mentioned this to you previously, but Quinyon Mitchell last year was a player who I think during the college football season, not many people knew about. But then draft season starts and everybody's like, oh, have you heard about this corner?
Yeah.
Who is just super athletic, a great play, aggressive. And that's kind of Mike Green is this year's Quinyon Mitchell to me.
Right.
Where not a lot of people probably watching Thundering Herd games outside of my own father, who is a massive Marshall fan, which is...
wow.
But he was the first one that clued me into Mike Green.
Really?
I was going down to the Senior Bowl and he was like, hey, keep an eye on that Marshall linebacker. And I'm like, Dad, it's an edge. But
Dad,
man, it did. Thank you, Dad. That was such a great tip because he dominated at the Senior Bowl. I'm so impressed with him. What do you think about Mike Green?
I love Mike Green. In my mock draft 4.0, version 4.0, had the Falcons drafting Mike Green. So I very much think that okay, so the thing about Mike Green is he has the production. When you just look at the stat line, it's like, oh, this guy's out of the water. But you also have to understand nothing against Marshall, but you do have to have the conversation of what was the caliber of tackles and guards and that he was facing, and also the caliber of quarterback. And I think that plays into the conversation around Mike Green. Yes, he has the production that you want. He led the FBS in sacks last year, but he's playing at Marshall, where competition is not. It's not the SEC level.
Don't you disparage Marshall?
I know.
Don't you disparage
I'm sorry.
my father's Marshall?
Don't do it. But I think overall, this has been a really important draft process for Mike Green to show that he can level up to the competition that he will ultimately face at the NFL level.
Yeah,
and
said.
I think that he had a really good, if I'm remembering correctly, he had a really good, very early on in the season, the college football season last year. Didn't Marshall play Ohio State? And I'm pretty sure that he had a really good outing.
They played Virginia Tech and Ohio State in back-to-back weeks.
Okay. Because I vividly remember, when I'm watching cut-ups of Mike Green, that he had a good game against Ohio State.
Keep going. I'm looking up the stats here.
And I think that and even if it's not a stat line thing, I felt his presence, I think, in that game and in certain moments of watching that game, or at least watching cut-ups of that game. So I think that he has the athleticism and the traits and the talent.
He had a sack in that game. He had a tackle for a loss. He had 2 sacks against Virginia Tech. So, yeah, early on in the year, like he made the statement, and you can only play the teams on your schedule, right?
Exactly.
But, like, he dominated those teams.
Right. And I think that it was really important I know you saw him at the Senior Bowl, so you can speak more to this, but I thought he dominated the Senior Bowl. Literally, the videos that were coming out of the Senior Bowl of him just absolutely running over some of these tackles were crazy. And it was in that moment where it's like, okay, you saw these flashes of him against like potentially NFL caliber players at the beginning of Marshall's season, and then it kind of goes away because they get into conference play and everything like that, and all eyes are on the bigwigs. All eyes are on the Georgias and the Alabamas and the Ohio States, et cetera, the Texases and the Arizona States now. But I do think that it was really important to come back for the Senior Bowl, come back for the Combine, and to show that, hey, I'm a force to be reckoned with, and I'm somebody who could theoretically be a top 15 pick, per se.
So we do a movie club here for the Falcons digital team. This is totally going, but bear with me. Have you seen Rocky 3?
Of course.
Of course.
Yes.
All right. Mr. T, Clubber Lang. Yeah. That is at the Senior Bowl. Shemar Stewart was Clubber Lang. Just big, imposing, loud. You could hear him sitting up in the stands, like every word, and he brought so much energy. And he was Mike Green, like Rocky Balboa. He's like learning how to fight, how to be fast, how to be strong, how to kind of like fly under the radar and then hit you where it hurts. Watching him, one rep just run through a dude's face, and then the next rep run right around a dude. Like, he had such a mission on every single rep and a plan. It was so apparent. Like, he was out there to prove something. He knew that that was his moment. And for everybody to kind of come away from the Senior Bowl being like, Mike Green, man, like I heard about him going in. That dude's good.
Yeah.
That dude's legit. So again, Shemar Stewart was a standout in his own right. They're just different.
They are.
And that's where like Mike Green had a little bit of an assassin's mentality, I think, coming in to the Senior Bowl, where he was like, I'm going to dominate this, but I'm going to do so just letting my play do the talking, which I really appreciated. And yeah, he caught my eye. There's really not been a moment, I think, during the draft process that I've had any questions about, but obviously he does have some allegations in his history stemming back from his time at Virginia, which he said at the Combine, caused him to transfer to Marshall. So he also denied all of those allegations at the Combine. That is what it is. All the teams will have done their own investigations into it, including the Falcons. So we're going to leave that right there. But let's move on to James Pearce Jr.
Okay.
How about that?
Interesting. I didn't know we were going straight to JPJ.
Yeah?
But
who these aren't in really any order. I guess I do still have just the PFF thing pulled up in front of me. So he was the next name on the list. But where would you have gone after Mike Green?
Well, I thought that we were going to, since we were talking about Shemar Stewart, I thought we were going to go.
It did cross my mind.
Yeah, I thought we were going to just go into Shemar Stewart or any of the Georgia guys. But
man, maybe you're a better host than I am. How about that?
I'll let that linger.
Naturally
in the
gifted,
air.
yeah. You're the Shemar Stewart to my Mike Green.
So James Pearce Jr., JPJ.
Let's do it.
I think that he is somebody who I think going into the 2024 college football season, a lot of people had higher on their draft boards than I think what he ultimately ended up being. I think right now people are kind of mocking him anywhere from being kind of like a 20 to 25 pick or even falling out of the first round, which I think it's a good thing for James Pearce Jr. because of the way that the bottom part of the draft, the last 5 picks in the draft, all of those teams need kind of guys on the defensive line. But just in terms of who he is and what he's been able to do at the college level, I think that he kind of reminds me, I'm not going to lie, he reminds me in terms of like the length that he has and how tall and long he is. He's not a thumper to me.
No.
Like he's very swift and he's long and he's lean, and he kind of reminds me a little bit of what Leonard Floyd was like early in his career, where it's like he can just out-athlete people and can just kind of like slither around people.
Yeah, that shadow monster. He just kind of like a big, thin,
and that's kind
Slender
of
man.
Yeah, that's kind of the like the vibe that I get from him. But I think that he has the ability to grow in the game.
Yeah.
And I think that he has you always, when you're talking about draft prospects, you always hear this idea of like, where's their ceiling and where's their floor?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he has kind of like a very pointed ceiling and floor where I know kind of where his floor is and I know kind of where his ceiling is as a player. And I feel like if you're making a commitment to somebody in the first round, kind of want that, a bit more solidified.
Yeah, he is a little bit of the boom bustier prospect, I think, in that first round, right? Because of his play style, like you mentioned. Like, you brought up Leonard Floyd. He reminds me a little bit of Brian Burns as well, but more so physically, like a little bit of a narrower waist, like Vic Beasley kind of too, that body type, like where they look like physically fit. Like you would just see that dude at the gym and be like, man, that guy, like that's a really kind of like jacked, just fit guy, like, but not necessarily screaming football player. Right. So his style is unorthodox in the way where he almost is like a basketball player or wide receiver at the line of scrimmage.
Basketball player.
Like he wants to like he doesn't really want a tackle to get their hands on him. He wants to shake around him and kind of make him miss.
He's slithery.
Yeah, he's dancing. He's a boxer. He's in there. Maybe I should have used the Rocky metaphor for James Pearce. But we're just which Rocky movie are you? Rocky 1. You're Rocky 5.
That's what we're doing.
You're a Creed. Get out of here. What are you doing here? He's for that reason, like you mentioned the teams in the later half of the first round. Imagine if like Detroit gets him and starts him as a situational pass rusher or something like that. Like I think
keep
that
mocking him to Detroit.
That's where if you're bringing him in on third down fresh every set, like early on, that is helping him reach his ceiling. But I don't know if he's going to be an every single down player in the NFL. And maybe that ultimately brings him a little closer to the floor.
Because I think that you feel good about what he can do affecting a passer, but how can he set the edge and defend the run? Because he is more of this like bigger or this like leaner body type.
He's 6'5", 243. By comparison, Donovan Ezeiruaku is 6'2", 247. So like that's much more of a kind of like linebacker build, stout, whatever. But like James Pearce is tall and lean.
Right. Which I think can help because you have, the long arms and everything like that. But at the end of the day, to your point of what you were saying earlier, like not wanting offensive linemen to get their hands on him, if they're run blocking, they're going to put their hands on you. And so how does he hold up to that at this level?
I don't know. I mentioned Brian Burns, but like Brian Burns had a insanely like otherworldly gift for balance when he was turning the corner. I don't see that from James Pearce. I don't see that like elite high level just kind of flexibility and bend that Brian Burns had and has, which is why he's such a good pass rusher. So I just Pearce is going to be one of the most interesting players, I think, in 3 to 4 years to just look back and be like, how'd he turn out? Right? Okay, let's go to Mykel Williams.
Yay!
If you all listened to our mock draft episode last week, which if you haven't, what are you doing? Pause this, go listen to it. It was amazing. It was a lot of fun. We took Mykel Williams in the first round, so spoiler alert. But let's talk about him again here. Tori, tell me about your Bulldog.
I think
our
he's
Bulldog.
I know. I was like, you also
I'll take him too. Yeah.
You also went to UGA. He is somebody who I think like we didn't see the best of Mykel Williams in 2024. He was hurt, very early on and had to essentially play through an injury that was one of those type of injuries that like lingers. And
lingerer. Pineapple Express.
Right. So I think that my biggest thing with Mykel Williams is, this was why it was so funny when we were doing that mock draft, because PFF had him like not ranked very high at all. And I think it's because PFF as a simulator is going off of their most recent tape and showing. And what 2024 was for Mykal Walker, I think, is not the epitome of who he is. I think that we were seeing 75 or 80% of Mykel Williams, and I think that we didn't see 110. And because of that, it's funny because I think that if we would have saw or seen 110% of Mykel Williams, he would be a lot higher up on a lot of people's boards, and a lot more of, because he's such he's a violent, disruptive guy that you have a lot of confidence in, that can, even when he's playing at 75 and 80%, his 75 and 80% is better than a lot of people's 110%.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel really confident in like the ready-made player that he is, that can come into the league and be a disruptor immediately in whatever role, that whatever defensive coordinator ultimately wants Mykel Williams to play in. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think that I don't think he was as stout in setting the edge and like stopping the run in 2024 because of that injury. But I don't think that that's going to linger beyond this year, and getting back to 100% in terms of health is going to be a big for him to round out his game as a whole. But again, the words that just come to mind with him is like very violent. He's very violent, and I love a violent edge rusher.
Yeah,
you want some guys who can get mad.
It was the disdainful was the word that I sang yesterday. There was a draft descriptor. I can't remember exactly who the player was, but yeah, it was disdainful hands. Like Mykel Williams has just like a disdainful demeanor, like just a game of like anger towards whoever is in front of him, and he reminds me of like just kind of an unstoppable, mindless force. Like he's just Michael Myers. Right? Like he just kind of is going to walk right through you and just get to the quarterback.
Your analogies today are amazing, by the way.
Thank you. I just looked in the mirror for 2 hours last night and I just recited them back to myself like I was preparing to give a presentation in school. So thank you. It's nice to know my efforts have paid off.
Of course.
But yeah, he's got it all. And I do think that, like you said, he enters the league, bare minimum, a really good run defender. Like, he is going to have a role on every single down, and he may not have right now the bag of a Mike Green or even maybe Jalen Walker, right, as a pass rusher, although I would argue that he does have some tools that he showed as 2 years ago that he didn't necessarily whip out last year.
Right.
But again, the injuries. But, like, he's got a really good swim move. He's got some good inside out. He has worked off of Jalen Walker, which I think is important, too. We talk about Jalen Walker and like what the Falcons could do with him given what they have in Caden Ellis.
Right.
But it's also important to note that if they drafted, Mykel Williams, he would know how to play off of a Caden Ellis. He's used to somebody coming from the second level on a twist, on a stunt, saying, I got to clear the way.
Things.
You're clearing the way for me, and then I'm looping around you on a delay. Like, there's some art to this. And I think that Mykel Williams offers a really nice package just on day one as a player that you get. And I can see he and Braylon Trice kind of just setting an early down. And then you bring in Evan Cady, you bring in Leonard Floyd, you bring in a rotation of these guys. Yeah. So I think he would be a more traditional selection. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I'm so excited to see this pick, because it's going to tell us a lot about the defensive design, I think, for 2025, because and maybe we'll table this for a second until we get, let's just get to Jalen Walker right now.
Okay,
because
might as well.
His Georgia running mate.
Yeah.
Because really these two players, I think, embody the two approaches that you could take.
Yes.
And if you go with Mykel Williams, it's a little bit more of a traditional hybrid where you're like, all right, we've got our 3-4 look, we've got our 4-3 look, players who can do both. If you're taking Jalen Walker, it's almost less like a Vic Fangio approach and more of a Brian Flores approach. And now I'm like, let's get some junkyard dog defense in here where you got 4 guys standing up who can all come and rush the passer. What do you do?
Which I do think is what Jeff Ulbrich and Raheem Morris are wanting to lend the defense to.
I like it.
I do think that if I don't personally, Tori McElhaney, I do not think that Jalen Walker is going to be there at 15.
Because you keep giving him to Carolina at 8.
I can't get him past Carolina at 8, where I have him going earlier. But I don't think he's going to be there. I'll say that first of all. But if he is there, and it's like between Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams, I think the variety of Jalen Walker's game, to your point, is he's like a Swiss Army knife in what he can provide, play in and play out, and you can move him around to so many different places, and you can do a lot of things with him. And he's such an interesting player.
Yeah.
And I think that I'll give Kirby Smart all the credit in the world that I think that he has helped create a Jalon Walker that is going to further grow the position of like edge rusher, inside linebacker, to the point of like, we know how I feel about inside linebackers that can rush the passer. I talk about Caden Ellis literally all the time. But I love this idea of being able to be creative and do different things with one specific guy. Jalon Walker allows you to do that. Over and over again. And I don't know. I think that he also has the like makeup of a person that I think this coaching staff would appreciate. Like I think he's been a good like leader at Georgia. I think that he is very communicative in his role. I think that he's just been very good for Georgia. Yeah. And somebody that has been fun to watch as someone who like loves scheme and versatility and all this kind of stuff. Like, if I'm looking at this edge rusher class, like I love watching Jalon Walker play.
He took over that Texas game in the SEC championship. Yeah, like
it was so
insane.
Fun to watch.
Right.
And I mean, I know that I have allegiance to the University of Georgia because I'm still paying back student loans to the University of Georgia. But I do think that like he can kind of do it all, and I want somebody who can kind of do it all because that helps out, I think, everybody.
For sure, and that's where I think that having seen the vision clearly with Caden Ellis and kind of like what they can do, I'm totally on board if they say, look, we know what we want to do with Jalon Walker. He brings this, he fits well with Caden Ellis. If you're going to run a lot of simulated pressures, having a lot of guys who can rush the passer helps.
I also think that to the point of what we're saying earlier, like I think that oftentimes like Georgia used him to kind of like just spy the quarterback.
Yeah,
like,
there were a lot of reps where I was kind of like, you didn't do anything on that play.
Right, yeah, right. But there were, I think like even just kind of like making the decision of like allowing different guys to have their moments within the scheme and also if you're using him to spy the quarterback, does that free up Caden Ellis to do something different?
Right.
And I don't know. I like it. I don't think he's going to be there at 15, but if he is, like that just to me is a Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich pick through and through. Yeah,
I would be very happy with that. I know a lot of our fans would be very happy with that as well. It would be a really, like, it would just get my brain churning with what does this defense look like?
Yeah, because I think he changes. You insert him into this defensive front, and I think it changes the way that you can call a game.
And how you manipulate numbers, right? Like how you get offenses to declare what you can then do on the backside off of that. Like there's a lot of flexibility that it gives your defense for a defense that already had a good bit of defensive flexibility last year.
Yeah.
All right, let's move quickly kind of from here on out.
You don't want to talk about Jalon Walker anymore?
We're bumping up against time, unfortunately, so we got to move on from the dogs, although how about them? Let's end with Shemar Stewart. Okay. So we'll talk about right now Donovan Ezeiruaku. We're going to save Shemar for the very last one. So Donovan Ezeiruaku, really quickly, he second in college football in sacks last year behind Mike Green. He is, I think, just kind of like when you envision a pass rushing prospect who brings he's just kind of what you would think of.
He looks like the traditional archetype of what an edge rusher is.
Yep. I mentioned 6'2", 247, smooth, runs the arc, has a nice bend, flashes some inside moves off of it, just kind of does a little bit of everything you would want your pass rusher to do. Yeah. Even if he doesn't necessarily do one thing like at the highest possible level.
Right. I think that's the thing about his game is the consistency. Again, going back to the floor and ceiling, like there are some players that are like flash in the pan, have the highest ceiling possible, but their floor could be so low. I don't think his floor is very low. I think that his floor is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think that he has the ability to grow into the game and grow into himself. But I think he's already kind of, we talk about ready-made players. I feel pretty good about his arsenal to a certain extent of his moves and the way that he uses his body and his intelligence. I mean,
he's like a technician.
Yeah, I think that he just finishes well. Like that, I mean, of course, you look at, over 16 sacks in one season, you're like, oh, well, duh, Tori, of course he finishes well. But, like, that's hard to do. Like,
he's got really long arms.
Yeah.
Like, his arm length, which is something we know Jeff Ulbrich really likes. So, like, if you're making a short list, starting with guys who have, really long arms. They're dragging their knuckles on the ground. Like, that helps.
Yeah, and I think that he probably could be better in the run a little bit. I don't necessarily see him as a big-time, like, run stopper, edge setter.
He's not the Mykel Williams.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But I do think that he is one of the best in terms of his arsenal of moves that he can deploy, and what he has in his bag, essentially, I think is the most robust.
Look at that.
I know.
Robust.
Of a lot of the guys in this draft class. And I think it's really interesting because I feel really good about who he is and what he could provide a team because of the level of consistency I see in his game when I watch it.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. He, again, is every single play like going to give you something.
Yeah.
And
it may not be the flashiest thing sometimes, but
he was productive.
He was so productive. That's the thing is there was a lot of flash in his game.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, like, I forget that because I'm he's doing all these like cool things with his arms.
I think it's because you can see the moments in like the run defense, and you can see the moments where he does maybe get swallowed up on a rep, and you're like, all right, like, is that going to happen more in the league?
Right.
When you get against bigger guys who are quicker, faster. But like, I'm always going to favor, I think, a guy who's toolsy, who's got like some of the hand fighting, knows how to counter it, knows how to kind of win in a phone booth.
Again, he looks the part.
And he can, yeah. So let's move to kind of the other side of that coin. Shemar Stewart, like, looks the part, everything you would want. I've made all of the analogies to just like Frankenstein's monster and all of that, but like, I don't even know what to say about Shemar Stewart.
I know.
He sets the precedent, and it's like the production is the only question.
I know. He's such an enigma to me.
He is.
Because you look at him, you watch him play. Like, it's almost like he's the other side of the coin of what we're talking about with Donovan, is that Donovan has all this production and you can see the finish in it, and, maybe has some limitations in terms of the run game or whatever the case may be. Shemar Stewart, you look at him and you're watching him play and you're like, how does this guy not have more sacks? How does he not have a bigger stat line? Like, it feels misleading. Like, it feels like I'm sitting here looking at this guy who has all of the traits in the world that you would want, looks the part, is this huge presence. Yep. And only 4.5 sacks in 3 seasons. Like, it's concerning to me. And I don't know. I feel like I know the game very well. I don't know why it hasn't been clicking. That finish part of it hasn't clicked yet. And maybe it's scheme. Maybe it's what he's being asked to do. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's closing speed. I don't know. But like, everything in his testing, his physical nature, it all makes sense. It's like this. It doesn't connect in my brain, and I don't get why.
Yeah. No, it makes, like, he is the conundrum this year. It's like, but I don't think he is necessarily as rare as I think everybody is making him out to be right now, because I think a lot about Javon Kinlaw. Mm-hmm. Like, a few years ago, we were talking about a similar type of deal with him coming out of South Carolina, where it was like just this massive dude who is way faster than he should be and strong. And if he gets his hands on you, he's going to throw you off of the screen and then go get the quarterback. But like, he didn't do that all that much on every single play, even though you're like, how is anybody going to be able to handle this guy? That's, to me, Shemar Stewart. And it was very impressive to watch him at the Senior Bowl. So I think that, if anything, actually raised my estimation of him, because he just was so fiery as a competitor. Like, I know this comparison is going to be, come with some baggage for this particular audience. It reminded me of Takk McKinley. Like, with the way that he just carried himself with such confidence and bravado, and like, I'm going to let you know that I'm the best. Mm-hmm. There were reps where it almost got personal between him and the offensive lineman that he was going against. And it was like, we got round 3 coming up, and because these two guys, when that ball snapped, it's a one-on-one drill right now. And the problem, though, take it or leave it.
Right. The problem, though, is like, we know how things ended with Takk McKinley.
Right.
And it's like, I'm not saying...
I know, the moment I said that, I could see the demeanor you changed.
I know, my eyeballs, I don't know if it kind of like twitched a little bit. Like, because I was just like, I mean, okay, that's a comparison to make, but like, ultimately, that didn't work out. Takk McKinley did not work out.
Well aware.
And like, I think with Shemar Stewart, It's tough. Like, it's tough. And I think a lot of times, and because I do so many mock drafts, a lot of times the way things fall is like you're either taking Mike Green at 15 or you're taking Shemar Stewart at 15. And I've taken both to kind of see how the fan base reacted a little bit when taking Mike Green over Shemar Stewart or Shemar Stewart over Mike Green. It was very apparent to me where the fan base lies.
They received both warmly and with a ton of praise and compliments?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
Absolutely not. It was very pro Mike Green, anti Shemar Stewart. And,
Ooh, interesting.
And
okay.
so it like significantly, it was a very obvious discrepancy in the way that the fan base looked at Mike Green over Shemar Stewart.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with what are you seeing from them? And you saw production from Mike Green. You have not seen production from Shemar Stewart in the way that I think the fan and the watcher of these games on Sundays or Saturdays or whatever day of the week it is, that matters. To them, it matters to their fantasy teams. It matters sometimes, a lot of times, to wins on the board.
Oh, 100%. That's such a fascinating, though, like, exercise in draft narrative.
Yeah.
Because Mike Green has been kind of the draft darling. Shemar Stewart has been,
An
you know,
enigma.
like kind of, though, taking hits because the production question is just coming up. But, like, if you, the captivation with both players is right. Like, both players should be really fascinating prospects to talk about. It's just interesting the way that we're talking about both, even though, again, like, you're not wrong if you're like, give me Shemar Stewart every single day. I will try to work with a player who has that chunk of marble just, like, to work with. You're not wrong for thinking that, but it's fascinating to see how it affects everything. So that is kind of everybody who I think could conceivably be in play at 15 for Atlanta. Is there anybody that you've been watching that you just kind of want to use this space for on day 2? Let's say Atlanta goes corner in the first round, or they trade back, and we're looking at maybe that second tier of guys. Is there anybody who has just really, like, jumped off the page?
Well, I think that, like, a lot of people would say maybe, like, Landon Jackson from Arkansas.
Yep.
I think that he's another person with, like, the length and the size.
He definitely,
he's 6'6", 264 like pounds. Like, he has this like look about him that I think looks a little dangerous. Like, it's like a little bit like it's just I think that he has the build of something that could become impressive. And so that's I like what I see.
He's
from
like if
him.
Jimmy Graham was a pass rusher. Is like that's kind of what he looks like.
Yeah.
He's long, he's tall, he's big, like he looks like a basketball player out there rushing the passer, but he's got more bend than you would expect. Like he's good. He's a good player.
He's good. And I think
good run defender too.
Yeah, I think I like him. That's a name that I'm like, I think that he's going to be kind of like a top 50 player. Like, and you could look at him early in that second round. If you're the Falcons and you decide to go edge rusher again or go edge rusher the first time, maybe you go somewhere different in the first round. I don't know. So that's a name. That's a name that I would throw out.
I like Landon Jackson a lot. He is somebody who, in that second tier, like he's easy to remember. He just sticks in your mind.
Yeah.
When you kind of watch him play, you're like,
oh, that giant dude.
Yeah. When you're trying to think of, okay, who else? Oh yeah, that guy from Arkansas who was just like, I watched him take down the quarterback with one arm, kind of grab him as he was being blocked around the edge. Yeah, he sticks in your brain. Somebody else who has recently just grabbed my attention is Braden Swinson out of LSU. A little bit of a late bloomer, somebody who I'm a little bit late too, but just if you're looking at a day 2 person with a lot of upside, he to me has kind of a similar Donovan Ezeiruaku, just like he does a lot of it.
Yeah, kind of the traditional archetype.
Really good kind of hand fighter, just trying to always find ways to get past the guy in front of him. And then he had some solid production this past year. He is a little bit more, I think, of an outside linebacker build, so he wouldn't be, again, your Michael Williams just to like set the edge. But if he gets a little bit stronger, he could be really in that mix with Braylon Trice and Arnold Ebiketie, and then you've got like, again, a rotation of guys, which was kind of the approach last year. I think he would totally fit into a situation like that.
Nice.
So Braden Swinson is somebody who stood out. And then you get into like Jared Ivey and Kyle Kennard, and some of those guys are stronger, powerful guys. Kyle Kennard is good, like pass rush potential. I think Jared Ivey is maybe a better like base end potential. But is there anybody else in that group, Jordan Birch, like maybe third round? They don't have a pick, but let's say they get a pick in the third round. Is there somebody among those names I just mentioned?
I mean, I think the Jared Ivey. Jared Ivey is somebody that I have known and watched for a while, and I think that because I covered Georgia Tech, and so I covered his initial ascension into college football before
the recruiting period.
Yes, the recruiting period before he ultimately went to Ole Miss. But I really liked what I saw from him. I also think that he has grown into his body from the days that I remember covering him. He was a bit more like long, lanky kind of guy.
He's 6'6", 285.
Yeah, and he is huge now.
That is insane.
He's a big dude now. And so he kind of does remind me of this like thumper almost. I use that term a lot, but it's kind of just those guys that can put their nose to the ground and just like get the job done.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the Falcons need more of.
I think what was Aaron Donald known for? He was so strong.
Yeah.
If he hit you, it stunned you.
You felt it.
So it makes a lot of sense if the Falcons were like, we need a guy who has just like punching bags for hands and is just gonna boom thump you right in your chest.
Yeah.
So makes a lot of sense. Let's go ahead and start wrapping up because we've run a little bit long today. But thank you guys so much for sticking with us. Hope you learned something about any of these guys that you didn't know about. I encourage everybody always to go turn on the tape yourself, look on YouTube, Google these guys' names. It's not that hard, but it does give you a great idea of, when you read everything that everybody's writing or you hear us talk about it on a podcast, being able to kind of, like we said with Landon Jackson, have that image in your mind immediately.
Also,
it's helpful.
This is subjective too.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Your thoughts on a player could be very different than my thoughts on a player versus the fan versus.
That's why I love draft season.
Yeah, versus like Kyle Smith in the front office. Like,
who do you think is more important amongst all the people you just named?
Definitely myself. Like Kyle comes to me. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's the fans.
Oh yeah, of
100%.
course.
What are you talking about?
I'm so sorry. Yes.
Me, the man of the people.
It's the fans. They care.
Awesome. All right. Well, Tori, thank you so much for joining me on this. It was a great exercise. Everybody, please, again, check out the website, atlantafalcons.com. Check out our podcast network, wherever you get your podcast, YouTube channel, all of that great stuff. But for Tori McElhaney, I'm Will McFadden, and we will see you next time.